The Bible is a goofy book, but in what way is it goofy? What you see on your screen is an experiment. I used artificial intelligence, and I asked a large language model, what is YouTube? And then it answered me, and it was clear, concise, maybe a paragraph describing what YouTube is to a modern person. Then I said, hey, ChatGPT, how would you explain this to a bunch of different cultures? I fed it specific cultures. And how would you explain what you just said to me so that it's relevant to all these different cultures? And, I made sure it was throughout the world and different cultures at different times. Now, let us read how ChatGPT describes YouTube. YouTube is a no-boundary gathering place, a giant market of thoughts, a magnificent hall where knowledge, entertainment, and stories freely flow. Here the wisdom of scholars, the skills of artisans, the words of poets, and the strategies of warriors are all preserved, not written with ink, nor carved into stone, but in the form of moving images and voices that echo across the world. It is a library with limitless books, a stage that never falls, a training ground where all knowledge seekers can learn, and a storytelling gathering by an everlasting bonfire. This is a place where teachers, creators, and performers speak to the world. Great thinkers display their discoveries, skilled craftsmen pass on their techniques, musicians perform for invisible audiences, and travelers bring news from distant lands. It is the debate forum, the academy for knowledge seekers, the temple where wisdom is passed down, and the battlefield where skills are tested. It is the square where people gather, the market where merchants display goods, and the palace hall where the finest from all places converge. Here there are no barriers. Oops, I went too far. What have I done? Here there are no barriers of distance, no story will be forgotten, no knowledge will disappear. The wisdom of the past stands beside the discoveries of today, and seekers of knowledge can listen to the voices of both the living and the deceased. Those who crave entertainment will find performances of all kinds, dramas without a stage, music without strings, stories that do not unfold on paper, but instead presented with light and sound. Those who wish to master a craft only need to watch and practice as if a tireless teacher were guiding them at their side. Here, whether high or low in status, everyone can speak on the same stage. The unknown can rise to prominence, and every voice may be heard by the world. Yet, just like all great gathering places, here there is both wisdom and ignorance, both truth and falsehood, both greatness and triviality. It is a sea of voices, a long river of stories, an unceasing place of conversation where those who share and those who learn weave history together. To enter here requires no gold or silver, but just as scribes, musicians, and artisans of the past relied on patron support, today some creators here also make a living through this place, and those who hold curiosity or seek joy exchange their time for knowledge or delight. This is a place where thoughts eternally intertwine, where past and present merge, where teachers, performers, travelers, and warriors all leave their marks. It is knowledge unbound, entertainment unceasing, storytelling without borders. It is not a world built from stone or paper, but a world composed of voices and images flowing across all lands, waiting for those who seek it. Now, is this text goofy in the same way most of the Bible is goofy? I think so, and let me show you what I did. So going all the way up to the top here, this was iterative until I got to that final result. Okay, I told ChatGPT, hey, describe YouTube to someone who doesn't know what it is and doesn't really understand technology. So it gives me this this is the initial prompt, and I said, okay, rewrite that description to be relevant to multiple cultures, all 50 states across the United States, European countries, India, and basically any country in the world that is primarily English speaking. To be clear, I want one rewrite that incorporates elements relevant to the different cultures I mentioned, and it must be in English. So this is to make sure it doesn't pull things from other languages and try to get confused. I'm trying to be as simple as possible, but also in English and make it relevant to an English-speaking audience. I'm talking to you. Okay? And so it answers that. And this, too, is basically concise, but it got this idea that maybe it should explain, hey, this is, in the United States it's this, and in Europe it's this, and that's not really what I wanted. So I said, okay, you misunderstood. I wanted a contextual rewrite that would be understood in the native language after translation, but written in English, and I wanted all the cultures to be mashed together. Okay, and so it tries to do this, and I want to expand it a little, and maybe instead of just adding a cultural element, cultural difference, I want to add linguistic difference and historical time and place differences. So here's what I write. Okay, rewrite this description to be relevant to all the world's cultures, but also make it understandable to an ancient Jew, an ancient Greek, an ancient Roman, an ancient Persian, an ancient Egyptian, an ancient Chinese people, a Mongolian, a Korean, a Chilean, and so on. Expand the text to be relevant to each culture and make sure it is understandable to ancient people. So this is me sort of playing prompt engineer. It's going to ignore me when I say all the world's cultures. That's almost impossible, right? Particularly for a large language model. It just doesn't have enough information to be saying that as a response. So I gave it a few distant cultures from one another and across time to try and give it the right idea. So, okay, it writes this thing, but then it starts to divide, and it says, oh, for these people, I would explain it like this. For these people, I would explain it like this. For these people, I would explain it like this. And that's not what I want either. That is too divided. That is not one response. So here I say, combine these variations all together in a single explanation. So it does that. It kind of puts it together. It still wants to divide them. It's making, instead of headers though, it's a little more combined. I say, okay, do not mention any cultures. Only describe YouTube. Really combine all the descriptions. Make sure to interweave them all in a single narrative. That last bit was very important. Okay, and it actually does this. It makes something pretty interesting. Now, I have one more little piece to bake into the pie here. So I say, okay, now translate that into simplified Chinese. And of course it does that. And the reason I do this is to make it hyper literal while also making it extremely contextual. Chinese is one of the most contextual languages that we know currently. Still an active language. So, okay. Then I said translate this Chinese into English using a literal translation of each term used. I knew that would render an interesting and very wild result. And that's what I read to you. That's the final result. So basically, the point of this whole video is to say that for the Bible to be relevant to every culture from the time of writing to today and in the future, it has to be this kind of goofy reading. It seems like one of the biggest objections to the Bible is it's weird. It doesn't feel relevant to the individual in the same way as a modern textbook might be relevant to a modern person. So this is the substantive response, right? It's not made just for you. So of course it's going to seem weird in places. It's going to characterize things in a kind of goofy way. It's not just talking to you, it's talking to everyone in perpetuity. And so I just wanted to make this video to make that single point. Hopefully I've made it in a reasonable way, in an understandable way. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments.